Morning. It looks like we are at about time. So it's good to see you all this morning and good to be together this morning on December 13th, Sunday, December 13th. As we settle into our worship service experience from some of the goofing off and the hoopla before the service, I just want to invite us all to just take a deep collective breath. And let us just with our prelude from Anne Rhodey. Good morning, and welcome to the First Universalist Church of Rochester, where we are called to nurture the spirit and to serve the community. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. And wherever you can openly listen and however you hear, we welcome you. We welcome all of you. It is good, it is good, it is good to be together this morning. If you are here for the first time, we especially welcome you. Thank you so much for making your way to our online worshiping community. We have a visitors form that can be found in the chat. Please click on it and fill out the form so we can offer you a welcome beyond this virtual sacred space and get you connected and plugged in with our congregation. As we gather this morning, and as some people have been doing, we want to invite you to pop into the chat and to offer a greeting. Please just pop into the top or the bottom or the side of your screen and let us know that you are here this morning with a hello, a good morning, we're here, whatever. It's so good for us to be together and so good to hear from you. Welcome, welcome, welcome to worship at First Universalist Church. This morning, our opening hymn is hymn number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. So let us join hearts and voices in singing this song out joyfully together this morning, recognizing that even as we are singing muted from our own homes, we are creating a collective song across our city of Rochester, the greater Rochester area, our country, and the world. So let us join hearts and voices in singing hymn number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In.
Good morning. The topic this morning is listening. Hard of hearing can be defined as physical and or mental. The physical can often be helped by devices. The mental is another story. We are programmed from birth by our relatives, friends, and associates to view relationships to others through their eyes, coloring how each new learning experience as if looking through their biases. As a child, I had this recurring dream. There were these fanciful beings that constantly were putting glasses on me that changed the reality of what I was really seeing. I would take away the glasses and another pair would be there. Of course, this had nothing to do with both my parents wearing glasses and my questioning of their attitudes towards life. I believe I was questioning what I was hearing and trying to develop my own inner soul and beliefs. Listening to others with an open mind and identifying with their joys, needs, pain of loss, and questioning why horrendous things happen to so many good people connects us to other lives so that we can appreciate their humanity, and in doing so, it affects our souls, expanding our understanding and capacity for compassion. We will now have the chalice lighting and chalice words. As we light our chalice at First Universalist Church, in your own homes, will you join me in saying our chalice words in unison? May we be people of welcome, here to grow in heart and mind and spirit, and may we reach out to serve our community. And the affirmation of faith. Please join me in our affirmation of faith, followed by our doxology. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the source and meaning of life. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all. We come together for this holy hour to listen, sometimes to listen within for that still small voice, sometimes to listen to the beautiful music provided by our congregation, sometimes to listen to a word spoken that we needed to hear. We come here each Sunday longing to hear a healing word, and we hope that all may find a space here to nurture your spirit and to serve your community. Your support this morning makes the good works of this church continue. Your support helps our worship services, our groups, and our caring ministries provided for this church. Thank you in advance for your generosity. Please click the link in the chat to give online to the First Universalist Church, or feel free to send a check to the church.
Good morning, friends. Gather round for our story today, a true one, and it is mine. The winter after my mother died, my immune system was a mess. Some of you remember, I spent most of that winter coughing and sneezing and sick with something, and my voice came and went. Eventually, I went to a specialist and was shocked to find out that all that coughing had caused me to hemorrhage a vocal cord. And the cure was no talking, no coughing, no noises of any kind for 5 to 6 weeks. Or I could be looking at permanent damage that even surgery couldn't fix. So I got myself a whiteboard to write on. I texted or used a text-to-talk app. I learned and taught my family some basic sign language. We rang a bell for dinner time, and we devised a system for knocking quick yes, no, or I don't know answers. When my family was calling questions through the house, where are my shoes? I don't know. It helped a lot for the basic communications of life, food, schedule, logistics. But I was grieving my mother and trying to settle her affairs, and I couldn't talk about it. My youngest was a year and a half learning new words every day, and I couldn't talk or sing to him. Worst of all, for as much as people do care, we aren't always great listeners, especially when communicating is difficult and it takes longer than usual. Our bandwidth and attention span only lasts so long. And it was also tiring for me trying to figure out how and what to communicate. I would think of something funny or interesting, and it would just be too complicated to share. I would have big feelings or want to share memories or wisdom, and it would just be too hard. So I stopped trying. Some things would have to wait, and it was very lonely. Luckily, my silence didn't last forever. My vocal cord healed, though I have to still be mindful of it. But it makes me think of those who that's life for all the time. Or it makes me think about our souls, that still small voice, our wise, essential self, or our higher self. It doesn't communicate in the direct way that we're used to. It takes time, intention, and deep listening for it to share its needs and wisdom. But what if we're not good listeners? What if we're too busy and our own heads are too noisy to hear even the most basic communications from our bodies and our spirits? Maybe they scream at us, eat, rest, move, sit down. If we aren't valuing it enough to make time and space to listen to more than the basics, if it's just too hard, does our spirit stop talking and resign itself to silence? If our wise, essential selves are shy, or if they're like me in my month of silence, it might take some time to build up trust that you really do want to connect. It will take personal empathy, as the wisdom of our souls is often more in feelings than in words. In order to care for ourselves and our souls, we need to know what we need. And that starts with a relationship that involves sharing and listening, time and care. If you haven't heard from your spirit lately, there's someone I'd like you to meet. Thank you for opening your heart in this moment and for taking the time to really listen to your shy soul today.
want to invite you now into this reverent time, listening to the joys and the sorrows of our gathered community. If you would like to, you can place a hand over your heart to listen from this heart-centered place and space. And as I place stones into a bowl of water, I will read aloud the joys and the sorrows of our gathered community. All are invited to share in our chat, to share your joys and sorrows so that we may hear and read from the community gathered here. So let us enter into this ritual time of sharing joys and sorrows with one another. I have a joy to share this morning from Hal Bauer and Gail. Our daughter Emily is in her second trimester and is expecting a new baby in May, our first grandchild. Congratulations to Hal and to Gail. And to Emily. A joy from Charlie Kortzel. After 6 weeks, I finally got back my board certification scores. I scored slightly below the mean, but I passed. Good for another 4 years. Congratulations, Charlie. We are cheering you on. A joy from Karen Labraco. On Wednesday, we were surprised by the early arrival of Apollo Maurizio Simon, grandnephew of Karen. The original scheduled baby shower on Zoom will still take place today. Mom is home, but Apollo will be in the hospital in Ohio for a few more weeks, so holding Karen and her family in our thoughts and in our prayers. We also have a sorrow and a deep sorrow that one of our members, Lillian Kellogg, has been infected with COVID. Cards are encouraged and welcome. Please reach out to our caring committee and send her a card to let her know that we are thinking of her. A sorrow from Gary Levine. Joyce Nakata's mother passed away last week. She was over 100 years old, my goodness. She died in her sleep at her grandson's home. Her family was fortunate to say their goodbyes and comfort each other. Our thoughts and prayers for the family. Yes, Gary, thank you for sharing that with us. A sorrow from Jim Milch. Our grandson was exposed to COVID at school. His class is now on Zoom and the whole family is in quarantine. Jim, thinking of your family. Jim and Kathy, thinking of your family. From Rachel Bells-Donza, a sorrow to learn a dear friend's family have COVID. Joy that they are healing and quarantining. What a mix. Thinking of you, Rachel, and also of your friend's family. Oh gosh, a sorrow from Lois Baum. A friend Cheryl has COVID, thus far quarantining at home. From Beth Ayres, I continue to be troubled by the anger, hate, and violence being encouraged by our leaders. Joining you in that, Beth, as I'm sure many of us are. A joy from John Lukes that Carol's mom is turning 90 on Tuesday, sending her birthday wishes. A sorrow for a dear friend from Emma Barry, our administrator, who is nursing a broken heart due to a recent breakup, holding all those who are in the midst of heartbreak in this time period. Oh, and just Hal Bauer echoing this good news about this grandchild to be expected. We'll drop another stone in there, Hal, for that. That's wonderful. Dear friends, I will drop one more sorrow from Karen Labraco that this morning her sister-in-law's mother died in California. She was ready, which certainly, I believe, gives those who loved her some comfort. But thinking of you and your family, Karen. And I will drop one final stone into the bowl to represent all of the joys and the sorrows left unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. May all be held in the heart of love. Dear ones, this morning as we end this important ritual, we are adding a new sacred element to our services for the Sundays ahead. Each Sunday, we will light a white candle to recognize that we are a community that is grieving and afraid in the midst of this pandemic. To honor all of the grief, loss, and anxiety we are holding in this time, we will light this candle each Sunday, holding all of the families and the loved ones, the friends and the close acquaintances we know who have been affected by COVID. May this light be a beacon for us and a reminder that we are not alone in the pain, in the sorrow, in the sadness, in the worry, but we are not alone in this time period. And may this candle hold all that is around this difficult and heartbreaking pandemic. May all be held in the heart of love. Dear ones, will you join me in a moment of prayer or meditation, taking a deep breath wherever you are, settling into your seat or your stance, allowing yourself to be held, making a connection with the earth as we enter into this time of meditation and prayer in our service. Candles lit one by one, holders of hope and promise, symbols of gathering, of resistance, of survival. Candles lit one by one, illuminating the faces of each family member chosen, blood kin, created, crafted. In the dark, we light candles to remember that this too shall pass, to tell the story of those 8 nights when people woke up, to pass along the story for generations upon generations to come. Let us remember that we too are a part of this story, a story of hard times when people wondered if they would live to see the other side, a story of unjust political rule, a story of both doubt and belief, a story of memory and hope deep in the bones of each one of us. Candles lit one by one, night after night, sweet bread shared between ordinary folks, family stories told and retold, futures imagined, dreaming of days to come. We have to wonder what the folks of the Hanukkah story dreamed for their future. We have to remember that many of us are the results of someone's dream for the future. We hold these knowings in our hearts this morning as we enter into the dark silence, knowing our hearts to be a beacon, knowing that it is not foolish to hope against all odds, knowing that we must keep telling the stories and remembering. Amen, amen, blessed be, and may it be so. Let us enter into the dark silence with one another, holding the season and its story in our hearts. Let us enter into this dark silence and seek where we might be hopeful. Let us enter into this dark silence and listen for what dreams might emerge. Our hymn of contemplation this morning is hymn number 225, O come, Emmanuel. A word of context this morning before our reading. Our reading is a meditation from Howard Thurman, who is one of the great unsung heroes of Christian theology and interreligious dialogue. His writings inspired the civil rights movement and many of its thinkers, and he is a man of his time. This reading makes reference to the spirituality of Indigenous folks and refers to them as American Indians. Some may find the term fitting. Others may find a better word to refer to Indigenous people in the United States. And I do not know Howard Thurman's relationship to Indigenous communities. Either way, I just want to invite us to still listen for the foundational truth of what he is saying. And in this morning's reading, an excerpt from his book, The Growing Edge. And his meditation reads, "There is something strangely comforting and reassuring about the private pretensions under which we live. It is a matter of no little significance to know that for each of us there is a world apart in which the intimacy of thoughts and feelings may be safe from attack and violation. Much of what we mean by communication is limited to the deliberate choosing of thoughts, ideas, sentiments, feelings which we direct towards others, yielding only the meaning of what we intend, which may not be the meaning that is true or honest. In time, we develop a dependence upon the impact which we make on others as the major source upon which we draw for an understanding of ourselves. I am impressed by the accounts which have come to us concerning the life of the American Indian at a time far removed from the present. To him, so the accounts reveal, the Great Spirit brooded over all of life in general and particular. If he went hunting prior to the journey, he invoked the Great Spirit. When crops were planted, when there were death and birth, in fine, all the common and special experiences of life were seen as being under the scrutiny and sponsorship of the Great Spirit. This meant that there was ever available the opportunity and the necessity of being genuine. The wall between the inner and the outer was very thin and transparent. The integrity of the act sprung out of the integrity of the person. With reference to so much of common life, there was no need to pretend. One dare not pretend to the Great Spirit. A crushing part of the sophistication of modern life is the phenomenal rise in the feeling for a protective covering that will make the integrity of the act an awkward procedure. Why is it that we are embarrassed by simple honesty and directness in our communication with one another? And yet the hunger deepens and becomes more and more insistent for ridding ourselves of the tremendous burden of pretensions. We long for relationships in which it is no longer needful for us to pretend anything. The clue to the answer is in the awakening within us of the sense of living our lives consciously in God's presence. The habit of exploring life, the motives, the dreams, the desires, the sins, all to God makes for the integrity of the person, out of which will flow more and more the integrity of the act. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts.
There were bells on the hill, but I never heard them ringing. No, I never heard them at all, till there was you. There were birds in the sky, but I never saw them winging. No, I never saw them at all, till there was you. And there was music, and there were wonderful roses. They tell me in sweet, fragrant meadows of dawn and dew. There was love all around, but I never heard it singing. No, I never heard it at all, till there was you.
Wow, Anne, thank you so much. That was so beautiful. I never really thought about that song as a song about listening or hearing until you sang it this morning. So thank you. Thank you, thank you. I don't know about you all, but sometimes I have a really hard time listening in this format. And I just have to tell you this morning that I am extremely grateful to each and every one of you who shows up here this morning and each morning, week after week, to come here and to listen to me, to listen to us, to listen to our amazing musicians in this congregation. And I just feel like this time period is just, there are so many things vying for our attention. And so this act of listening is so key right now and something that feels just very potent in this time period. I know for me, this summer, I was attending some online worship services at General Assembly, and I had the realization, oh my gosh, this is kind of hard. And I just was overwhelmed with gratitude for all of you who come here and listen each week. And I also just recognized some of the limitations of this time period as I found myself, both in these GA recorded worship services and sometimes absent-mindedly scrolling through my phone, if I'm going to be honest. It is hard right now to listen. And I can really appreciate that. And I really just appreciate the ways that you all come here. And I also never take it personally if you are here scrolling through your phone in worship. It is so hard. As we headed into our monthly worship theme of care of the self, care of the soul, I knew I had to include Howard Thurman in at least one of our worship services, if not also on Christmas, because he has literally the best Christmas reading ever. His meditative writings are often based on listening within, sitting in stillness, giving our soul or our spirit the attention that it needs. Deep encouragement from a deep well. And this man had a deep well, rich with metaphor and rich with so much. And again, he is an unsung hero here. He's amazing. He's an amazing writer, and not enough folks know about him. And though the reading this morning is of its time and may not have the nuance we might seek in the present day around race and around gender, there is still deep truth here. To listen within, to have safe space is essential for each one of us to live an authentic life with ourselves and with others. His way of describing the inner world and its outer expression as the deliberate choosing of thoughts, ideas, sentiments, feelings which we direct towards others, yielding only the meaning that we intend, which may not be the meaning that is true or honest. Wow. Like, what a mirror, to be honest. What a mirror. A friend of mine calls it the curated self, a way to show to others what we want them to see, but maybe not being honest about what is actually within. And his invitation to be in this listening mode with ourselves, with the divine, however you choose to define that term, and with others is something so sacred. His invitation into a more authentic self by shifting our listening sense away from other people and their responses and what they think of us, towards something larger than ourselves, towards the divine, towards the higher self, is some of that deep soul work that I feel each one of us are called to do. This is lifetime work. If we spend our lives listening and reacting to responses from other human beings, we are resigning ourselves to a life lived out of fear, lived in curation, and with attention to the response we garner from others. We live our life to please others, and in fear that perhaps we are failing. If we spend our lives listening inward and consistently touching base with the divine, we may get to a place of more authentic living from that voice within all of us that wants for our well-being, for the collective well-being of all, for the deepest love of creation. Listening is a sacred act. It is bringing our full attention and presence to someone or something. Again, not without challenges, but to listen acknowledges that we still have so much to learn. To listen is to sit with the words from another source or from within, without forming a response right away, but just to be in a receiving mode and an acknowledgement. It is a stance of openness, a stance of creating space for the unknown, to move through our days and our lives, a space for pause, to bring our full attention to the mystery, to our sacred source. And in our community, talking about listening can be complicated, especially when highlighting listening to others. Each one of us brings a different level of hearing ability to this community, some with razor sharp hearing where you can hear something happening across the room. Siblings conversation. I'm looking at especially anybody who's parented a toddler before. I feel like that's oftentimes the place where we have to really listen across the room. Are they okay? Others here who are hard of hearing, who often need to ask for folks to speak louder or speak slower or use hearing assistive devices. You may notice this morning that we are doing our very best, our level best, as much as we can today at First Universalist to make this worshiping space accessible here and virtually. So this morning we are live captioning our services for the first time. And this is a practice I hope that we will continue. I would be delighted to read or to hear your feedback about this experience on your end. We really, I feel like, need to pay attention to hearing accessibility here and in that future that I hope and I know so many of us are dreaming about, when we can all be here at First Universalist Church, sort of dreaming about how we can be more accessible for the hard of hearing here in our building. Necessary. Yet this act of listening within, to our internal monologue and dialogue, to that deep voice that Rev Michelle spoke about in our story this morning, it feels to me to be the great equalizer. Connecting with a divine source, listening to a voice within, this is available to each and every one of us. It is not about outward communication, but rather remaining in that safe space of our own inner world, exploring that which we know in our guts to be true and right, and exploring that which does not sit well with us, those things that disturb us or set us off a bit, the things that nag us, the things that get stuck in our craw, as it were. This pandemic time is rich with opportunities to go deeper inside of ourselves, to tend to our own souls through acts of listening. This is available to all of us. All that is required is a bit of time. And therein lies the rub sometimes, doesn't it? Because when we are in perpetual motion, when our minds and our bodies are consistently moving, we are often not quite able to be fully present, to really listen, or at least that's my experience, my life experience. For some of us, a little motion may be helpful to listen, like stimming or knitting or hooking or crafting while you're here in the worship service. Having something to do with your hands, I feel like is more of a focusing activity than a barrier to listening. But I wonder what you have in your life that is a barrier to listening within. I wonder what you have in your life that is a barrier to listening without, to listening outside of yourself, to others. What conditions are necessary for you to bring your full attention to something? I know that for me, and probably for many of us, I have a sort of filter. I'm often listening to others through the filter of my own experience, almost like the glasses that Bob was talking about in our call to worship this morning. And sometimes this means that you may say something to me that doesn't quite land in the way that you have intended it. Have you ever had that happen to you? Often these filters show up as hearing people through previous life experiences and through the current state of one's life. In this pandemic, it feels to me like so many people are on edge and overwhelmed, or even burned out, or past burned out to crispy. When one person asks us to do something in this state, the instinct on my end has been to snap or to clap back. And that instinct can just be right on the surface, especially when we're crispy. The person doing the asking may not know that you are overwhelmed or feeling burnt out, but the response comes through that filter, for sure. Or times, I'm thinking about times when someone's been evaluated by their boss and has had experiences in the past of getting in trouble or being unjustifiably punished, whether in childhood or in school. That trauma becomes a filter through which they listen to their evaluation. That trauma becomes a life experience that often informs their response. To recognize and name these filters, whatever they are, that we are listening through in our own experience can be such a gift to ourselves and to others. And as you may imagine, I think getting to know our filters really requires some of that deeper listening within. What are the parts of my story that are showing up right now? Where can I take a pause for just a second and recognize which filters are showing up in this moment, in the response I would like to give? In this time period where literally no one is functioning at our best, and if you are functioning at your best, that is wonderful. I'm so glad for you. But I don't know. I'm on gallery view right now. If anyone here is functioning at their best, please raise a hand. Okay, all right. And when literally no one is functioning at their best, it feels like a good time to know how we are listening to others. And to recognize that when we might be responding out of past experiences or out of the present stress and reality of our lives, to possibly just take a pause before responding. As my colleague, Reverend Sunshine Wolf would say, take a beat before responding. This is a time when so much can get miscommunicated. It is a time when we can hear folks around us through the stress we are experiencing. It is a time when our filters are front and center. Misunderstanding is rampant. We are often dealing with quick written communication, such as emails or social media or a text message, all of which rob us of hearing the intonation in one's voice or looking into the eyes of another as we speak. And so we are having to develop different ways of listening. We are having to dig into this process of listening internally more and more as we spend more and more time with ourselves. To listen is a practice. It is something we must come back to again and again. There are so many different ways to listen, like turning inward in a moment of quiet or stillness and listening inside of ourselves. Sometimes it is just enough to listen to our own breath and close our eyes. Our breath is a common source of life, and it connects us to all living beings. It is a way to get in touch with something larger than ourselves. Sometimes in moments of intentional stillness and listening within, we can begin to hear a voice or an instinct that is guiding us in a certain direction. The decision to listen to it or to ignore it rests entirely with us. And I have found that when I listen to that voice, when I follow that guidance, this is where authentic living, where a life with inward and outer life matching up or syncing up is possible. It's the sweet spot where we learn to show up for ourselves, not for what we think others want from us. This time period has called us to a different way of listening to others by reading their body language over a screen. Without eye contact, we must rely on our senses, mainly our sense of sight and that inner knowing to sense where people are. It's like this heart-to-heart connection that we still have to dig into in this space. A possible gift of having to be connected over screens is that those of us who are hard of hearing have a pretty good front seat to lip reading and facial expressions. People are no longer at a distance, they are right there. And we are developing our own senses about people, calling them when they come to mind, paying attention to how to connect to others in a different way, longing to listen to others because we crave conversation in this world where casual conversation is so much less and less a part of our daily lives. What I find fascinating is the chance to listen to others past what they are saying, to get to the message below the message, where our filters operate, where our life experiences come together. Shame researcher and public scholar and speaker Brené Brown encourages us to share the stories in our heads with others as an act of vulnerability. To share with you that the story that I'm telling myself about what is happening between us right now is this. And in utilizing this practice, oftentimes others are able to share the story in their heads of what is going on, the message beneath the message. Just as I talked earlier about these conditions of our lives and how they affect how we listen, this is a way to explicitly get to that, to own our filters. I am hoping that this time is bringing more space for discernment. We're listening to that guiding voice within and what it is telling you about what sits right with you and what does not. Our internal voice and guidance is often oriented towards what is just and best for the collective good. That voice can sometimes be drowned out by the clamors of the world and the pull or the allure of individual gain. It is seductive, isn't it? As the injustices of our society continue to be unveiled and revealed, as we have some time and space to reflect on who we are in this community and in our current landscape, I hope you are finding more time to listen to that inner voice guiding you and to act accordingly, to show up for yourself, to live this more authentic life, where the veil between the inner and the outer grows thin and transparent. And of course, this time has brought us to a place of listening more deeply to the world around us, and not just to one another. It is a time to listen to the cycles of the earth, to be in touch with the seasons. For those of us with good eyesight and/or a deep connection to the natural rhythms of the year, we are taking in information about the world around us, in the leaves falling from the trees, in the dark, cold, or coldish weather outside, in the ways that the dark settles in so early in this this time of year. It feels earlier than last year. I don't know if that's true, but sometimes I find it is helpful to sit and to listen near a window to the sounds outside of our homes, to the sounds of the natural world. I find it helps me to really sort of sink into what my place is and what my space is in the natural order of things. To remember that I am connected here. To remember that I have a role to play. Nature has so much to tell us about who we are in relationship to other beings. And perhaps that is what you can listen to, depending on your personal theology, for that guidance, for that deep, connected guidance. What does the natural world have to tell you? What message is the world around you bringing to you? As we head towards the solstice, as we make our way through the Advent season, as we gather to light the lights each night of Hanukkah, my hope is that you are finding space to engage with this sacred practice of listening. Make space for it. Slow down your days and make room for just a little more listening, to tend to your spirit, to tend to your soul. Let us not allow the busyness of this time period to take us away from the sacred act of slowing down enough to listen. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so. Our final hymn this morning is hymn number 1001, Breaths. We invite you to remain muted and to sing out joyfully from home, again, creating a collective song from wherever we find ourselves. Let us sing together.
Listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. Is the ancestor's breath when the five's voices turn? Is the ancestor's breath in the voice of the
Dear ones, as we extinguish our chalice flame here at First Universalist and in your own homes, please join me in saying our chalice extinguishing words in unison. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. And friends, I just want to invite you to turn your computer or your screen, wherever you are, to gallery view, and let us join in a time of going forth from our service. If you would like to reach out to the edge of your computer screen to connect, to create an unbroken line. If you are joining us on the phone, if you would like to just put a hand over your heart and think of someone that you care about or love in this congregation or in your life. Dear ones, may you go forth this week to listen. May you slow down enough to hear the rustling leaves or the breath in the wind. May you be able to slow down enough to listen within, to get still, get quiet, and to draw the veil thinner between your inner and your outer worlds, to live a more authentic life. May you know that in that place and in all places you are loved. And may you go forth and be that love to everyone whom you interact with on the screen and over the phone and over text message and on social media and in all the places. May you go and be that love. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so. And as we draw our service to a close, I would love if you would follow the benediction by typing into the chat, I honor the many ways of listening. Let us settle into a time of listening to a postlude from our fabulous musician, Anne Rohde.
Greeting cards have all been sent. The Christmas rush is through. But I still have one wish to make. A special one for you. Merry Christmas, darling. We're apart, that's true, but I can dream, and in my dreams, I'm Christmasing with you. Holidays are joyful. There's always something new, but every day's a holiday when I'm near to you. The lights on my tree, I wish you could see. I wish it every day. The logs on the fire fill me with desire to see you and to say that I wish you a Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah too. I've just one wish on this Christmas Eve. I wish I were with you. The logs on the fire fill me with desire to see you Happy New Year too. I've just one wish on this Christmas Eve. I wish I were